Polygyny was quite a common phenomenon, not only in Africa, but across, I'd say, 3/4 of the world. And it still exists in one way, shape or form today. So if you look at the West, that says it's a monogamous system, but prostitution is rife and is quite respectable in terms of, they're not called prostitutes, they're called sex workers. And it's very, very common for men to have affairs or serial relationships, but that's supposedly a monogamous social system. And then when we look at polygyny, which is still very common in Africa and in the Caribbean, by the way, but what we called it in the Caribbean was the other woman syndrome or the outside woman syndrome. So this is a phenomenon that has been happening throughout time. I wouldn't necessarily say it's been there from the beginning of time, and we know time began a very, very long time ago, but it has developed, and it has developed as a way of really, I would say, trying to put balance back where there has been imbalance. And why am I saying that? If we look at men, the death rate of men going off to war, men being the ones who traditionally in some societies went off, I wouldn't necessarily say hunter-gatherer because that's only an aspect of our history, but we've always had these systems where women would actually come together collectively and share in some of the domestic responsibilities, which in an African context is not us sitting at home. We never ever had that kind of a privilege as African women. So we developed these family systems, and in particular for us, it was an aspect of our nation building, because if we look at strong societies, strong economies are built around families. It's families that build communities, that build nations, and that build strong economies. And in a system where you have more than one wife, then they're all economic producers. And the amount of children we have, we know historically, our children were our wealth. Because the more children you have, the more wives you have, the wealthier the family is. Why? Because there's more people on board to do the productive work and to engage in the labour. That's just how it was. And we shouldn't really put a judgment on it, because it's a system that in our wisdom of the past we developed. And some would say that it was an oppressive system that men developed. I think that's a particular nuanced view of looking at our history. From what I can understand and what I know about the role of women in actually developing mathematics and developing science and knowing how to make the little bit that we had stretch, women also played a significant role in the institution of polygyny. And this may be a difficult pill for some of us sisters to swallow, but from the research that I've been doing, I think we'll find there is some truth in that position. Now, polygyny as a system can be oppressive to women, but it's not in the institution of polygyny. Monogamy can be oppressive to women. If people are not serious about committing to marriage and to family and to developing, nation, then any kind of relationship system or union that we develop can be oppressive. So it's not in the institution of polygyny itself that there's an inherent oppression of women. Let's be very clear, there are women who are single that are being oppressed by men. There are women that are married monogamously that are being oppressed by their husbands. So it's more to do with the lack of commitment or lack of maturity or lack of honesty that various individuals may have when embarking on these choices that I think, would be to blame rather than the institution itself. What I would say about polygyny, however, is just because culturally we've done something all the time doesn't necessarily mean that we've got license to do it again. I believe that in the modern world, when there are so many pressures, economic and otherwise, and just greater spiritual emotional pressures and challenges in terms of sustaining healthy and effective relationships. Polygyny is not necessarily the license of all men. I personally feel it takes a very spiritually mature man to be an effective polygynous husband. And what there would need to be as well is a social infrastructure to support the development of that. Marriage is an institution. Family is an institution. Plural marriages require institutions to support them. It is a system that goes beyond just a man and a woman deciding they like each other. So therefore, what that means is that we have to be committed to nation building. Within the context of nation building, polygyny makes better sense. And even in the West now, where you have so many single parent mothers, women out there trying to find appropriate husbands or partners, you have many of our men incarcerated in prisons, in the psychiatric institutions, you know, whether we're being killed, whether we're killing each other with escalating gun and knife crime, then we do have a shortage of men. Not only that, we're also dying from diseases that are preventable, the HIV/AIDS pandemic. So ultimately, what we're seeing is the lessening of our lives, and that is having an impact on our global nation. So polygyny may be a way forward in terms of trying to correct a balance.